Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, friends. Good morning, Anshul. Thank you for the introduction, and we look forward to the exciting day when we are going to learn a lot about what Lymphomap can do for our patients. But before we start, I thought it is important to, understand the burden because and the problems that solutions can be found accordingly. The two of the most common questions that I have confronted in my clinical practice is there a cancer epidemic in India? And the other is, why did I get cancer? I don't smoke, I don't drink, I'm a religious person, so on and so forth. And we've done research and published, in these two papers in the last 7 years or so. I will not go into the details, but I will use some data from these papers to tell you about the problem. Cancer is a problem of all multicellular organisms, and mutations arise right from the time an egg is fertilized in the womb. And throughout the lifespan, some mutations keep happening, some of them are eliminated, some are retained, and then there are those driver mutations which give the cell an ability to get out of control and grow. And so as a person grows old, a number of driver mutations are getting, in control, and that's what results in cancer. When people are exposed to environmental and lifestyle risk factors, this process happens faster and in more number of people, and therefore smokers will naturally get more cancers as compared to a non-smoker. In fact, cancer affects all multicellular organisms, and this is the data from the zoos in France, and you can see birds, mammals and reptiles are all at risk of developing cancer in their lifetime. Digestive cancers, incidentally, is quite similar to what happens in humans. So are hematopoietic cancers as well as skin cancers. And these are three areas you will realize where there is a rapid turnover of cells throughout the life cycle. Interestingly, this is a very unusual example of a tapeworm that was living inside a man, an immunocompromised man. The tapeworm developed the cancer, and the cancer got metastasized to the man. So, just to illustrate that cancer is something that happens in all multicellular organisms, and if the organisms live long enough to accumulate these mutations, they go on to develop cancer. Two very famous researchers, Vogelstein is the most cited researcher, and his colleague Salsati published papers in Science 2015 and again in 17 that broadly divided cancer causation into those due to heredity, less than 5% of all cancers, those which are purely environmental driven, about 30% of all cancers, and the vast majority, what was called as labeled by the media as bad luck. That means mutations happening while the cells are divided at random constituted a large number. Of course, there is a debate about this number. It's a very strong debate by different groups. But the fact remains that these two are the most important mechanisms, and even if you are not exposed to any risk factor, because of the cell divisions that happen and because of spontaneous mutations that can accumulate, a good number of patients will end up with cancer, particularly like cancer of the breast, the prostate, the colon. These are some brain which are common to random mutations, and lung, smoking, Helicobacter pylori in stomach, papillomavirus in the uterus. These are more of environment. As a result, if you look at the cancer incidence by age groups in India, and these are estimated for 2020 by the WHO's Globocam, to see that when somebody gets to the age of 70 years in India, almost 1 out of 10, this is per 100,000, 1 out of 10 would get cancer. So it is simply a matter of growing old and escaping these random mutations. And what has happened in India over the years, this is the lifespan of an individual a long time ago in the 1800s. You can see it was about 30 years even in 1940s. And it crossed 50 years in about 1970s. And now it is in 2020, it is about 68 years. On the other hand, other countries long cross these lines, and therefore they have a lot of cancers compared to what we see in India. And if Indian life expectancy goes up there, we are also going to see even more number of victims with cancers. And that is very diagrammatically shown here. The red line shows the population of elderly population in India during the census from 1901 to this is projected for 2021, and you can see the elderly population shot up from about 75 million 110 years ago to about almost 140 million now. And the cancers have been rising constantly at a constant rate. I mean, the rate is not increasing, but just because the population is increasing, the number of people getting diagnosed has gone up. And this is another data from the field. This is the Mumbai Cancer Registry in the population. The red line shows the age adjusted cancer rates. You can see it's up, high up, 1 in 10 when you get to 75 years. More than that, this is in 1964-66. And this is more recent, about 58 years later, the same pattern continues, but actually the rate per age group has an increase. So in other words, there is no real increase in number of patients with cancer. It is our population has increased, our age groups have increased. And so the main reason, I call it the pseudo epidemic, because there is no real epidemic. The population has increased. There has been aging of our population. Diagnosis has improved. There is now ultrasound and CT guided biopsies being done. Liquid biopsies being done. There is good registration in the public health system. So all this has actually increased the number of patients. And WHO Globocam predicts that by 2040 our cancer burden will almost double what it was in 28. So if our cancer facilities fail to catch up with this growth, then you can imagine what will happen. And one of the unfortunate things is that we are failing to catch up with the increasing growth. As a result, if you see the rest of the world, including the world average, you can see there is a decline in cancer mortality over the last 20 years. Whereas in India, we have less cancer at the moment, but the mortality is rising, and this is not a good thing. If you look, if you tabulate the incidence, that is the new cases that is happening every year in our community, and the deaths that is happening in our community every year, for some cancers it is a little better, that 0.5%, that means only out of 2 ladies diagnosed with breast cancer, 1 succumbs every year. But for a cancer like liver, everybody who is diagnosed, almost everyone dies of cancer within a year, and the rest of it is all here. On the whole, as a country average, the mortality from various common cancers in India, the average is only about 30% of the patients survive for more than 1 year. This is the reality. This is not what we see in our hospitals, but this is what is there in the community. So it's quite a bad situation. And one of the main reasons for this is that we have not kept up with the growth of the burden and created services to diagnose, stage, treat, and follow patients with cancer. So this is a paper that we published 7 years ago, and it shows, just let us look at Eastern India. Eastern India has 26% of India's population. That's about 22% of all cancers in India, but there's just about 10 to 12% of radiation therapy centers, recognized oncology facilities, and recognized oncology fellowships. So there is a huge gap that we are not able to provide. On the other hand, southern India, if you see, southern India has a population which is about similar. There's more cancers because southern India is has a higher human development index and a larger older population. But if you see in terms of facilities, you can see that they're all far more, and that makes these patients travel to south, which is something that you see day in and day out. Patients are going to Bangalore, to Chennai, to Vellore, to Hyderabad or Mumbai all the time, spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time of their family members, lot of costs added because of boarding and lodging. And because the time runs out or the money runs out, they stop treatment halfway through and get back. And these are all the contributors to the poor outcomes of cancers in India. And this is a picture from PMS Mumbai where I worked for 25 years. Sometime before I left, these pictures were taken. You can see the crowd. So there is a pseudo pandemic that's happening. It is filling up the hospital with patients mostly coming from East and North India. And the reasons for this are obvious. There are lack of local facilities, also lack of faith in the local treating system, and they get low-cost medication at these centers. And of course, a lot of patients want to have a second opinion because after all, we hope that going to a higher center may get a better treatment and better survival. Just to highlight one of the important issues again, this is a study that we have published recently, and I am the first author. And what it shows is that patients who took rituximab for the treatment of B lymphomas, high-grade B lymphomas in the first year of operation at Tata Medical Center, Kolkata, had a far better survival than the group of patients who were unable to receive this, mostly because of financial difficulty. So I do not think that the financial difficulty problem can be solved by artificial intelligence or machine learning. But yes, the digital healthcare can increase or rather decrease a lot of unnecessary expenses which can be used for providing drugs like rituximab to patients with lymphoma and improving their survival. So where do I see Lymphomap, an artificial intelligence, machine learning powered digital health ecosystem in helping us and also those in the global south? The low-hanging fruits, I would say, is like digital consulting, monitoring digitally, managing adverse events digitally, follow-ups, counseling, and even carrying out social research because we need to understand the reasons why patients are traveling long distances and or patients are dropping out of treatments. But the more important core of the Lymphomap would be an AI and machine learning based diagnostic methods, helping to risk stratify our patients. give the same treatment to a lot of our patients and we know that the outcomes are not the same. Can this help in picking only those in whom it will benefit so that the money saved can be used for others where it will help? AI can also be used to predict adverse events, to stratify patients for palliative care, to help in follow-up. For example, uh, the machine can send a message to somebody that it will be a follow-up time if you have any come. It's a very simple thing. And of course, precision oncology. So in summary, cancer is going to rise in India further. Even if nothing, there is no change in any other factor. The rising cancer mortality and disparity is worrisome. Digital oncology, if used properly, can help a lot of our patients. Artificial intelligence and machine learning can help solve many of our problems. But importantly, just like patients have mistrust in the local health systems and go travel far away, we need to make these technologies acceptable and that they develop trust in them. Only then it will work in our community. Thank you and wish you all a happy Diwali.